Welcome to Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis. So viewer question today. My buddy Thomas J. Curran has a question about grip sizing. When Thomas was sized originally for his racket, they used basically my technique, right? I've showed you guys in a different video before. So let's grab a racket. So my technique, and there are other ways, is you look at your palm and you look at your fingertips, right? Back in the day when I was sized, as well as when Thomas was sized, we basically didn't want our fingertips to touch the palm. Ideally, you would want your index finger to fit in between right there. So essentially, I would be, like Thomas is, a 4 5/8, right? So let me grab a 4 5/8 and show you what that would look like. So I got a 5/8 in this racket. I started with one of these. So this is a 5/8, right? And that's still a little small for me. But I think back in that time, 3/4 was pretty rare, and 5/8 was pretty much the industry standard to buy. So even a 5/8 would essentially be too small for me. So I would probably be a 3/4, but those were pretty rare, and 5/8 was, like I said, the industry standard. It was either a half or a 5/8. So I wound up getting a 5/8, just like Thomas did. So Thomas is 5'9", so an inch taller than me, 170 pounds, a lot skinnier than me, and he was told to get a 5/8, but he bought a half, and he put an overgrip on there, which made it in between a half and a 5/8. You know, that's pretty standard to do, right? But his question to me is, he has friends that are shorter than him that uses 5/8, right? Shorter, smaller in stature, that uses a bigger grip than he does. Now, why is that? Well, if you're part of that old school, which I'm part of too, it was the biggest grip that you can hold would be better for you. So you had more control over the racket. Now, the way that tennis was taught back then was everything was continental. It was a continental grip, which is this grip here, right? So a 5/8, a half, anything huge would make the most sense with a continental grip, because you wanted as much mass as you could, right, in front of your palm. So this would keep your racket steady, right? And you would have the most control over your racket. The way they swung, the way tennis was played, was essentially, turn. Remember turn, right? So turn, step, hit, right? Turn, step, hit, right? That's how I was taught. So basically, you came straight back and straight through, right? Like straight through. Remember that? Well, in order for your racket to be steady, because you had a firm wrist, right, bringing it back and straight through, you needed a bigger grip to keep it steady. If you had a small grip and you missed a bit, it would twist in your hand. So that's why bigger grip, older stroke, better for you. Now, Thomas goes on to say, well, he used to go to tournaments and, because he worked in like the police field, and he was able to see pro players' rackets. And he happened upon Michael Steep's racket. And, Michael's like 6'1", 6'2". and he used a 4 1/4. Right? I think we're talking like 20 years ago, maybe a little more. It weighed a ton, but it was a 4 1/4. So he was wondering, why would somebody like that use a quarter? Well, tennis started to change during the 90s, the early 90s, when basically forehands changed, strokes changed, technology changed. We went from, rackets kind of like this to like a Pro Staff, Sampras type of a racket to more wide body, lighter rackets, right? So we couldn't hit the same way as we could in the past, right? We saw the grip getting changed to a little more over semi-western to more western, right? Semi-western, eastern to western, right? So if you're holding it like this, like a frying pan, like how I do it, it's you don't want a bigger grip. The smaller grip will give you bigger snap, right? So with into the 90s, a modern forehand, or that time a modern forehand, you wanted to release the forehand, right? You wanted a bigger serve. You had technology now that was more powerful, right? No longer was it a flexible, small wooden racket like this. You had a graphite stiff racket now, a la something more like this. Therefore, it was easier to snap. It's all about the snap, right? When it was a smaller grip, it's easier to release that. You're not holding it stiff and through anymore. Now, Tomas actually said, whoa, Michael Steek with that 4 1/4 grip got good wrist snap off of that serve, right? You guys remember his big serve? Well, he had a big heavy racket, or little heavy racket, with a tiny grip. He used a 4 1/4, right? So why did he do that? Well, hey, it's all about snap and release, right? You see in the modern days that we all know Nadal uses a 4 1/4 grip, takes the replacement grip off and goes to over grips, right? Why does he do that? Well, because his forehand, he does this deal. It's easier to snap up with a smaller grip, right? It's faster. You can actually snap faster with a smaller grip. Why does Fed use a 3/8 grip, right? He's 6'2". Shouldn't he be using like a 5-inch grip, right? Well, it's easier to snap, right? To let it go. With the modern forehand, it's easier for fluidity. Now, my own experience was, up until about 5 years ago, I used a 5/8 grip, right? I should be a 5/8, as you guys just saw. Now, I went to a 3/8 with my Burn hundreds 5 years ago. It took a pretty big adjustment to get there, but I kind of saw, the benefits of it. So here's the thing, though. A smaller grip will benefit definitely your serve. You will get more snap and more velocity on your serve. Your forehand will have more snap on it. If you have a two-handed backhand, you will be fine. All that will be totally fine. Now, the places that a small grip affects you the most is when you have a one-handed backhand, because when I first went from 5/8 to 3/8, I couldn't find the bevels because it was smaller. So with a 5/8, I immediately, gripped it, and there's the bevel. I'm going for it, right? With a smaller grip, I was like searching for bevels. I was like searching where my hand was supposed to be. So sometimes I do that today too, as to, where are my lines? Where do I feel? Where should I be? with a bigger grip, I can immediately kind of feel that. The other stroke that it affects is actually your volley, right? With a bigger grip, because we're going to hold it continental, just like old school. So with a bigger grip, it's easier to be, oh, I'm continental, I'm here, I'm ready to go, right? I'm here, I'm ready to go. With a smaller grip, it's like you don't quite have the feel and the control and the stability as you would with a bigger grip. So the smaller one is like, oh, it's like kind of almost like holding on to a twig, you know, like, oh, where is this grip going? So that's the benefits and the benefits of a smaller grip, and sometimes the disadvantages of a smaller grip. But it seems like with today's game, we benefit from a smaller grip, and that seems to be the trend. Even though it doesn't quite fit you right, you know. Now here's a trick though, guys. Here's a trick. Now, back in the day, like I say, this 5/8 is even too small for me. But what I notice is if you don't grip it so tight, and if you spread the fingers a little bit, you know, like I hold my forehand like that. So, you know, if you don't hold it tight, the gap becomes greater. Now, back in the day when I played with a wooden racket, it used to be grip it and rip it, right? You hold it as tight as you could, continental grip, and then you just, you know, rack it back, step in, go for it, right? Like go for it. Since we're not gripping it so tight anymore, there's more spacing in the gaps, right? So if you're one of those people who have the death grip on your racket, right, stop doing that, right? Because you're taking a lot of fluidity out of your stroke. You're eliminating power out of your stroke, actually, the tighter you grip this. So try not to grip it so tight. So in today's game, whatever grip you're comfortable with, go with it. The trend, though, is definitely smaller. But if you're used to that, you know, OG 5/8, roll with that if that's what you're comfortable with. Because, you know, if you're 6'2", you know, 6'5", you shouldn't be using a quarter unless you really want to, and you have that kind of game. But like I said, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay? So thank you for watching Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis.